Welcome, healthy friends, to the reality of health. This subject is pretty much near and dear to my heart. I feel for babies and pets. You know why? Because they can't tell you when they're hurting, when they don't feel well. How do you know why your baby's crying? You have no idea. It must be hungry. Must be this, must be that. When really it could just be that he doesn't feel very good in the gut. And one reason could be poor nutrition, milk that's not really milk, like formula. So they don't feel well. And then you say, man, I don't know what to do. I just won't stop crying. I'm told to use this type of stuff and that. Boy, it comes down to, what am I supposed to really do? Then you come up with things like, well, I don't want to breastfeed because of this reason or that reason, or we're in public. Any number of reasons. I get it. Totally understand. Today's topic is more going to be about why you really need to focus on real breast milk. We're not going to get into all the nuances of why you can't, or why you maybe shouldn't, or my doctor said this, or my friend said that, or my baby won't do this. No, not going to get into a lot of those. We can get into those in another episode, but today I just kind of want to give you a really good primer on why it's so important to use human milk for human babies. Irina Chalmers, there are 3 reasons for breastfeeding. The milk is always at the right temperature. It comes in attractive containers. And the cat can't get it. Yeah. Well, for those of you who may know me, I like quotes, and that's a pretty good one. So this is from PubMed. Just a quick rundown of why or what breast milk really is. It's a pretty good description. Human milk is a dynamic, multifaceted fluid. That's awesome. What that means is it's a living food that you create as a human, that another human gets to drink, eat, consume, and in turn gets fed, containing nutrients and bioactive factors needed for infant health and development. Nutrients and bioactive factors? Don't worry, we'll get into those. Its composition varies by stage of lactation and between term and preterm infants. We're going to get into that. While many studies of human milk composition have been conducted, components of human milk are still being identified. You don't say. As in, a living food source made by a human could be more than just some things that we've found that we think we've named. Could actually go deeper than that. Oh yeah. Science doesn't cover everything. Science is like, we've done only scientific studies where we had a theory, we wanted to test it, and then we realized, it's not all that important. Or, we did all these studies because we're going to make a lot of money off this. They don't do studies for stuff that is really all that interesting because it's all about the money. And I will tell you right now, they don't care what's in human mother's milk. If they did, they would try and make formula like it would be the pinnacle of nutrition science, creating the equivalent to human milk. But they don't care. They can just sell you garbage and pawn it off as mother's milk when it's totally not. I digress. But humans' mother milk is so much more complex than we know, and it's life-giving. And essentially, if you think about it, isn't it life itself? And by the way, milk is very close to blood. It's almost the same thing. Let's see. Components of human milk are still being identified. Yeah, so like I just said, I know, Eric, move on. No, this is important. They have not identified everything because they don't want to identify everything. And then it costs a lot of money to identify those. And who's going to pay for those studies? To figure out what that thing is. What's this compositional tissue thing, cell, whatever? We don't know. Well, let's spend money. No, we don't want to spend money on that. That doesn't really do anything for us. You would think that, breast milk, human milk, and I hope you understand me. I'm going to get into some crazy things in here. And I think I just decided I'm going to make this a two-parter. Yeah, this is going to be bigger. I don't want to hold back. I want to speak my mind. You can't tell me that a life-giving food, something that's made by a human in an organ, is not important. Nah, we don't need to know really what's going on there. We don't really need to know all the nutrients and cofactors and proteins and fats. Nah, it's not important. It's only what you give your baby when it's born. It's not that important. Just give them formula, with like soy and sugar and really terrible fats. Kid will be fine. It'll be fine. Yeah, no, it won't. Okay, I got to calm down. This gets me excited. This is extremely important to understand. They don't want to know more than they already know. And yet I'm saying, and I'm not just the only person saying this. There are many people around the world that want to know as much as possible about what is in human mother's milk. There's so many more components than we know. And I'm going to show you a list that they know of already. If that doesn't blow your mind, and that's only partially what we know, I don't know what else will. This is so important. This is your child. This is your baby. You need to do as much breastfeeding as you possibly can. I'm going to get into it. Don't worry. I'm going to get into the situations you might be in. Don't worry. All right, let's move on. Standardized multi-population studies of human milk composition are sorely needed to create rigorous, comprehensive reference inclusive of nutrients and bioactive factors. Yeah, like I just said, it's so important, but they don't make money from it. You'd think that if they could find stuff in there that they could, extract and then sell for God knows how much money, and you could be like, well, my doctor, he prescribed this thing that comes out of human mother's milk, and it's only $2,000 a pill. Don't worry, my insurance will pay for it, or Medicare, whatever. No, they don't care. They don't want to know. They're not doing the studies. Sorely needed is the words that they used. Can you tell I'm a little irritated with this whole thing? Don't worry. I'm gonna show you some great things. Just bear with me. I had to rant. I apologize. An infant, by the way, another PubMed. An infant absorbs 92% of breast milk lipids. That would mean fat. Think about it. So if it absorbs 92% and it barely has a digestive system, it's almost like that human baby was designed that way. Like it needs fat. Fat from breast milk is perceived as the main source of energy, which covers the energy needs by 50%. So what would you think would be the most important nutrient in mother's milk? That would be fat. Moreover, fats are the tissue building materials. This is where I put on the thinking cap, the proverbial thinking cap or something like that. So in nutrition, in medicine, in disciplines that teach this stuff and promote all this kind of thing, they tell you fat's bad. You don't want fat. Fat's terrible. It makes you fat. It ages you. It causes diabetes. No, it doesn't. They're lying. If it caused all those things, then why would it be in mother's milk? Eric, because you need babies to gain weight. So when they have fat, they gain weight. So they're not, underdeveloped. No, that's not what happens. Fat is part of tissue building materials that are the basis of just general tissue in the body. You can have a fat baby because you're feeding it sugar from formula and seed oils, vegetable oils and that stuff. Saturated fat from your mom does not make you fat. It makes you healthy. Either way, tissue building materials. Did they say, moreover, fats from your mom make you fat? No, that's not what it says. Fatty acids, specifically linoleic acid, are the precursors of biologically active substances. In particular, prostaglandins classified as tissue hormones such as prostacyclins. Okay, so what it's saying is you make hormones, whatever hormones are. Like I said, I'm working on that. I'm trying to figure out if that's really a thing. I'm not exactly positive just yet. I do know there's chemicals or things that we find in nature that we put a name on them, but we haven't really figured out what they are. And then we just attach a theory and then we run with that theory and it ends up becoming a complete mess. And then you teach it as fact and then it creates problems for everything. Like, oh, you need these steroid hormones, and then they give you steroid hormones while you're sick and you think you feel better, but all you did was hurt your lungs. Or while you were taking those, you gained 5 pounds because you were sick. You shouldn't be gaining 5 pounds because you were sick. There's something wrong there. Anyway, point is, they're building materials. This is super important. Fat is the main reason why you need mother's milk. Just saying. Check this out. This is a great graph. And by the way, the graphs, like I've said in past episodes, I'm trying to bring you things that you can look at that are way more interesting than what I just showed you, which is just, words on like this, right? That's boring. That's really boring. It doesn't really engage you. This is more engaging. Could you imagine reading all of this in this format where it's just, that's boring. Anyway, look at all the nutrients. I'm going to go through these, but this is all we know right now. Like they said, they're still trying to figure it out. There's many more things going on. Let's blow this up just so you can see it. I wanted you to see the whole thing first before I blew it up. That way, you saw how, you know what? Let me just, before I do that, I'm going to show you this. Here is, that would be formula. That's it. That's all there is. Here's real breast milk. Here is formula. Eric, you don't understand. I can't make breast milk. Don't worry. We can get into that in episode 2. I'm just talking about the differences between. I'm going to get into this in a second. Let's go back. Okay. Fun stuff. For those of you nerds like me that want to know about nutrients and all that stuff. One of the main components of breast milk is actually lactose. So you have fat and sugar as the two biggest ones and a small amount of protein. This graph is showing you pretty much everything as far as all of the milk made. Milk made from basically day one up to 2 years differs in its content of nutrients. It changes that your mother, her body creates that milk based on your needs. It already knows that. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people believe in God or stuff like this, because there's got to be a higher power that knows that, well, you need these things like right here, 7 weeks in, but you need these things over here 2 days in, but then you need these things over here at 4 days in. And you see how this is? It's crazy. There's no way that this just happened by chance. Anyway, I think you get my drift. So you need these saccharides, you need these sugars. So you have water as a main component. You have carbohydrates, obviously gives you energy. And then, lactic acid is part of milk production, but that's not important to really know right now. But proteins, that's important to know. Obviously, we have all these different types of proteins. Then you have non-protein nitrogens. So nitrogen is one of the ways that your body grows. Think of, when you put fertilizer in your garden, one of the things that's in there is nitrogen, because if you want plants to grow, they need lots of nitrogen. Well, all of these things from creatine all the way through to nucleotides, they're all producing nitrogen, or they work with nitrogen in one way or another. So they grow you. And of course, you have amino acids, and all the proteins in your body are made from these things. That's what they say. I won't go there. Regardless, a lot of stuff going on in there, right? Then we have fats. This is the main reason for breast milk. And look at the first one, triglycerides. But I thought that was bad for your health. Why would you give a baby who's a day old triglycerides? Isn't he going to get a heart disease? No, they don't. Why? Because they build tissue. I'm going to say this over and over again. Fat builds tissue. Your body is made out of protein, fat, and water, and some minerals, but mostly protein, fat, and water. If you didn't have fat, you wouldn't be soft and supple. If you didn't have water, you wouldn't be soft and supple. If you didn't have fat, you wouldn't have a brain. You wouldn't make bile. You wouldn't have eyes. You wouldn't have any nerves, no sheathing on the nerves, and on and on and on. You need cholesterol and fat. Then we need phospholipids. These are basically phosphorus and a fat combined. They do crazy great things for us. Sterols, things like cholesterol and all of that. Look at all those sterols. Amazing. But you're not supposed to have those, Eric. Those are bad for health. No, they're not. It's a big myth. I got cholesterol episodes. Go back and listen to them. They're lying to you. You need all the fats. That's super important. Vitamins, all of them. It's in breast milk. Minerals, all the majors. Because think about it like this. Breast milk contains everything that your mom is eating. And then when you need things that she's not eating, her body will steal those, let's call them materials, and give those to you in the milk. Very complex. So she's making these things. Let's just digress for 1 second. Squalene. She's making squalene in her body, and then you get it. You're not making squalene necessarily as a baby. You're getting it from her, so that you can grow fast. Then, as you get to the point as you're growing that you can start making your own squalene, this is why all of this has its timing. And I'm going to get into a little bit more of this. It's timing in order to give you what you need at the time of your growth. Let's say, for example, you need squalene at 2 months, because previous to 2 months, you really don't make enough. So then mom starts making squalene at like month and a half, 2 months, so that you have building blocks. Let's say that you don't really utilize creatine until about 3 months in. So she doesn't really start giving you creatine until about 3 months in, because that's when you need it. It comes when you need it. And anyway, so all these big minerals are coming from mom and what she ate. Don't worry, we'll get into what you should eat. Growth factors. These are awesome. So I love the fact that they actually call them growth factors. And in this case, they're talking about the maturation of the intestinal lining. All right. Here's a tangent. And if you want to have a look into my brain, so I'm not a doctor. I'm not a research scientist. I'm nothing like that. I just have spent 35 plus years reading and learning and studying on my own and using my own intellect, or whatever you want to call it, and, deciphering skills. But here's what I see when I see that. Maturation of the intestinal lining. Why would that be important? Well, that would be because you want to make sure that you have an intestinal lining as quick as possible to be able to take in mother's milk and all of these things as you need them properly, very quickly. So let's say that a baby's intestinal lining is pretty well developed. It's pretty good. Maybe it's quite porous, and maybe the mucosal lining isn't really, really good. If mom makes these growth factors, which I believe that she does right away in the colostrum, which I'm going to get into, that immediate growth and maturation of the baby's intestinal lining then allows these nutrients to be absorbed properly when it's time. Think of it like, if the squalene that I talked about isn't absorbed until 2 months in, well, you need to maturate the intestinal lining first in order to be able to absorb the squalene, so mom doesn't make a lot of squalene until about 2 months in. You see? Or proteins, or nucleotides, or any of this other stuff. You're eating something. So the baby's eating milk, right? What does it do when it eats milk? Well, it's got to go into the digestive system. Where does the digestive system start? Well, that would be in the mouth, and then it's going through. They're not going to absorb too much in the mouth and the esophagus, right? The stomach starts to break some stuff down, and then the absorption basically really starts in the small intestine. But what if the intestinal lining isn't very developed? Well, it's not absorbing much at all, or the right things, or protecting the body from not absorbing the wrong things. That is really important. So that's how my brain thinks, and I'm no different than anybody else, and probably, if you asked 100 research scientists, they'd be like, yes, that's how a normal human would think. You're just being stupid. Like, that's normal. You're nothing special. And I'm nothing special. Anyway. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I look at that and I say to myself, there's something there, and you got to put 2 and 2 together. Moving on. Peptides. Lots of talk about peptides. Yeah, I know you know that. What are these? Not so sure just yet. I think a lot of these are, I'm just going to move on. Hormones. Again, chemical messengers. Are they? We don't fully know just yet. There's a lot of theories, but we don't know exactly what they are or what they're made out of. Regardless, we find these things in there. Same with the peptides. Enzymes. So your mother is giving you enzymes. Why would that be? In order to digest the milk. Yeah, you need to break down the proteins and the fats. That's the lipase, for example. You need to be able to digest everything. Pretty cool. because, your organ being your bile and from your liver and everything, it's not doing all that much when you're like 4 days old. Antiproteases, whatever. Those are just what they're saying here is they prevent allergies and anaphylactic things like that. Okay, they're probably in there. Have to research more on that. Antimicrobial factors. All right, here's the big one. This would be your immune system. Well, your immune system is how your body cleans itself up. Lots of different things. Look at all of those things. All of these help your body clean itself up. These are not technically an immune system. You could call it immune, but that immune, basically says that you're producing things that attack, things that are attacking you and gets rid of them. When really, our immune system is the terrain, which says, oh, you got this thing coming in? No problem. I'm just going to eat it up and take care of it. It's simple. It works. And it's proven, by the way. Regardless, wanted to just show you all the different things. Look at all those things in milk compared to that. Not good. This is the comparison for human, cow, and goat raw. This is hard information to get. Let me tell you, this is not easy to find and show you a graphic like this, but I wanted to point out two things here. Fat as the percentage and cholesterol. Notice human has a higher fat composition than even goat, but sheep is even higher, and then there's other ones like buffalo that's really high. But just wanted to point out, it's higher than cow. This is raw, remember. This has not been heated and homogenized and all the other garbage that kills milk. Cholesterol. Look at how much cholesterol per 100 milliliters. It's a lot, and it's high on purpose because you're supposed to have it. You're supposed to make your brain and your nerves. And kids need bile still because they're starting to digest. They need the help. They need the cholesterol. They need to make eyes and skin and organs and tissues. Pretty cool. Anyway, thought that was neat. Here's the formula. I said this earlier. Look how many nutrients there are compared to actual real mother's milk. But I want to point out, this is really annoying, but I have to do this. All of these that they put in formula are going to be, I'm going to use the word synthetic, just meaning that most of these are synthesized. They're made in a lab. Or the minerals are just pulled straight out of dirt. These are terrible for you and toxic. The minerals are in forms that are extremely difficult to absorb. So you are giving a baby bad protein. In episode 2, I might get, if you want, you can tell me in the comments. We'll get into formula and why it's bad. Or I could just do a third episode on that. Well, you let me know. The fat is terrible sourced. It's going to be vegetable and seed oils because they're cheap. Never going to give your kid actually what they require. The carbs are going to be pure sugar, which they are. They're not really going to add water sources because it's a powder. And then linoleic acid. You only want so much of that. You don't need a whole lot of that. And then, of course, all of these are, for the most part, toxic because you can't really use these as a baby. They're not taking, let's just say, vitamin E from kiwi. they're making it in a lab, all right? And they're not giving the good kinds or whatever. Anyway, and then the minerals are terrible. You can't absorb them. They're horrible. So they're not, you're giving your kid formula. I understand if you have to. There's better ways than formula. But essentially all you're really giving them is just bad fat, bad sources of protein like soy, and bad sources of carbs like straight sugar. That's all it is. So the infant disease risk from not breastfeeding. I just picked a quick one here, and this is PubMed, all right? So if you don't breastfeed, these are just 5 things that you could end up with. Respiratory tract infection at 3.6 times the normal rate. Gastrointestinal infections typed at 2.8%, or 2.8 times higher. Type 2 diabetes, infant disease risk from not breastfeeding. Type 2 diabetes at 1.6 times. Is that happening at 3 months? Is it happening at 3 years? Is it happening at 30 years? I don't know. I didn't read this article, but it doesn't matter. The fact is that it's affecting, if you don't breastfeed, it affects your kid's ability to create insulin in the future, or the quality and the healthiness of their pancreas. NEC in preterm infants at 2.4% and SIDS at 1.9, or 2.4 times, and SIDS at 1.9 times. There's a big thing here with SIDS that I want to get into, but we won't right now. I'm going to do probably something in the future on this. But this isn't always from not breastfeeding. There's a nefarious situation here happening, which we can get into in the future. The benefits of breastfeeding for moms. Again, a graphic. Bear with me. I want to show you something a little bit more interesting. Breastfeeding babies have better sleep patterns. That means you will too. When they're nourished properly, you get to sleep too, because they're sleeping. Less uterus bleeding and quicker return to its normal size. This has to do with everything from all the tissues that you stressed during pregnancy. And then now by creating milk and give to the child, there's this circular life phase. I don't know what else to call it than that, where the brain is saying, all right, I'm producing milk. There's a baby. I can bring my uterus back down to normal, become an average size, because I'm feeding a baby. Just like lactation provides contraceptive protection. Yes, it totally does, because it's the nerve impulses from breastfeeding send to the brain like, we can't get pregnant. We're in the middle of breastfeeding a child. We don't get pregnant right now. So then the uterus comes back to normal. There's all these signals going on all the time. Faster loss of pregnancy weight. Yes. Oh yeah. Why is that? Well, because you need to create all this energy by creating all this milk for your baby. The baby's not there anymore, but you need to make a food. So you become a food factory. Where does it get the fat from? Your food and your body, which is saturated fat. The saturated fat from you goes to the kid. So you start, it's almost like lowering a bag. Eric, it doesn't work that way. Yes, it does. Where do you think you get the nutrients from? Get it from your body. You're making, technically milk is, like I said, it's almost exactly the same thing as blood. You're basically giving life to your child. All that you don't need, you can create it into milk. And of course, it's way cheaper. You can save a lot of money. All right. We're past 30 minutes now. I think this is good for this episode. I know it's a lot of information. I was a little worked up. I get it. Certain things, like I said, I'm sensitive to this subject. Babies and pets, because they can't tell you what's going on. I want your baby to grow up to be super healthy and you don't have all the issues and mom feels better and everybody's happy and all of that. This is important. Breastfeeding is amazing. You don't utilize it, that's it. There's consequences. If you can't, I'm going to try and help you. There's ways to get help in order to be able to breastfeed. There are things you can do. If it's so bad that you absolutely cannot, then I'm going to show you options. Either way, appreciate you listening today. If you like this, maybe, like, subscribe, all that kind of, things that everybody always asks all the time. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves.